Hi everybody, Luke Film Boss here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But this review is going to be a little bit different. First off, there's going to be heavy spoilers, so if you don't want this movie to be spoiled, do not watch this video. Go watch the movie for yourself first, if you are already planning on watching the movie. If you are kind of on the fence about this one and or just aren't really interested in this franchise or in this movie, I would say just skip it out on this. But if you are a diehard MCU or Marvel fan or Doctor Strange fan, or you just really were interested in this movie and you know what you're getting into, I would say go ahead. It's okay for a one-time watch, and if you like it, you can watch it as many times as you so choose. But to start off, I'm going to review this from a critical standpoint. What did I think of the film? How did it make me feel? How much did I get invested in the characters and such? I'm going to be completely honest. I really liked this movie. Sam Raimi directed the original Spider-Man trilogy, some of my favorite comic book films, and some of my favorite movies of all time. And while this movie is very much different than those films, you can still tell that there was a creative, artistic director at the helm of this particular superhero movie. And so it's very much different than the typical superhero film, and much, much different than what we, as the audience, expect from an MCU film. And I personally liked that aspect of this film. Visually and stylistically and creatively, Sam Raimi just brings such a uniqueness to this film. I really liked some of his cinematography and just some of what he does visually with the characters and the different magical elements and the multiverse and all the everything he brings to the table. And story-wise, it is so refreshing and so much different than the average MCU film. There's the typical MCU bits and like jokes in there, but it is very vague compared to the rest of the film, which there are aspects of violent, just violent action in this film. It's got some horror elements in there. Um, yeah, it's pretty much a mix between a horror film and an action film, and it works very well. It's not 100% horror, and there's multiple moments where it does just pretend to be like a regular MCU film. Mainly at the beginning, a few of the action scenes just felt like the typical Marvel formula, and that was okay. And as this movie goes on, it definitely, especially the second half, leans completely into Raimi's vision, and that worked for me. I thought that this, in terms of the high stakes, the stakes are way higher in this film than I feel like they've ever been in the MCU. Maybe tied with Avengers Infinity War, but I feel like things were a lot darker, and the stakes were higher even in this film compared to Infinity War. So it's just, this is what I've kind of been wanting from Marvel. I mean, Eternals kind of did it, and it didn't work for me. This film does not suffer all of the same problems. Well, in fact, it doesn't really suffer the problems at all. Although there is a few minor things in here that just peeved me. But they were able to be overlooked. They didn't really affect the story at all. And then there was other aspects that I'm going to get to later that did heavily affect the story that I was able to look past, as long as hopefully this is kind of like a one-time thing. But it might not be. But to continue with my critical review, Wanda Maximoff, and once again, I am not going to be spoiler free. I'm going to spoil this movie very heavily. So if you don't want spoilers, don't watch. But Wanda Maximoff, she is essentially the heart and soul of this film, which is weird to say because she is the villain. And she is 100% the villain. The trailers, the advertising, I want to mention, was done very expertly and very misleading, but it works. But pretty much everything you thought you knew about this movie through the advertising kind of just isn't. It's not what you think. This movie subverts expectations from essentially the very beginning, not quite, but pretty early in. It kind of subverts your expectations. And Wanda is 100% the villain from start to finish. Well, not necessarily finish, but from start throughout most of the movie, she is a bad, bad person. She has the Darkhold, which is like a spell book of witchcraft, and it pollutes her, and she becomes this terrifying being of unfathomable power. And she's evil. Wanda is not good, although her motivations are very solid, and she essentially just wants to be with her children from an alternate universe, and so she's willing to do anything to get there, and that makes this very interesting, especially for her as a villain character, because she's been so well developed throughout the franchise so far, from Age of Ultron till now, and you definitely see all the pain she's gone through, the fact that she knows that her children are out there, and she had to, she kind of had them in WandaVision, but they weren't real, and she had to let them go, and then she wants to have her real children, which aren't really her children, but they are. Multiverse, complicated stuff. I think you would understand, especially if you watch the movie. But yeah, she is very interesting, and I liked what they did with her. I'm going to fast forward to the ending, but she does terrible stuff in this movie, but she does eventually see the error of her ways in a very emotional ending for her. And essentially something I really loved about this film, and I'm going to get more into the mystical witchcraft, some people say demonic, and some parts are definitely have demon related issues. But something I really loved is that Wanda Maximoff, in the end, she sacrifices herself, or at least I hope so, because if they try to play the whole, oh, she didn't die card, like they do in a lot of these films, or the resurrection card, it just kind of destroys any, I mean, it doesn't necessarily ruin this movie, it just will lose my respect for this MCU franchise, because it happened way too much, and I just want them to stop. They finally, with Spider-Man No Way Home and this film, it seems they're trying to like bring higher stakes to the MCU, and even the Eternals. Like I said, that movie I had lots of issues with, but it was definitely more of what I wanted from an artistic standpoint and from a story standpoint somewhat. And so Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness definitely does that. And Elizabeth Olsen's Wanda Maximoff sacrifices herself to destroy the Darkhold, and it essentially not essentially, it does. It just destroys it throughout the entire multiverse. So essentially, she sacrifices herself. She realized how wrong she was. Although that doesn't mean what she did in this movie was right. She realized that it wasn't right. And it doesn't justify herself completely, but she does have this redemption moment, and I thought it was really good. And she destroys herself and the Darkhold. Essentially, she's getting rid of some of the most powerful witchcraft in the entire MCU, which a lot of people, Christians primarily, probably would have a lot of issues with the witchcraft and wizardry in this movie. And I can understand that. If you don't want to watch this movie, I'm not going to pull your leg to. It is not for everyone. And I can't say it's a movie that I would suggest anybody watch on loop. I wouldn't say that there's any harm in watching it once. But then again, if you feel convicted about that, don't watch it. But I just felt like there was a lot more good than there was bad in terms of that. Back to characters, I'm going to get back to all that. Doctor Strange, he doesn't get completely overshadowed by Wanda Maximoff. She kind of does outshine him in this movie, but it's still very much a movie about Doctor Strange, and I really like what they did with his characters. They go into his character, much more than I feel like any other MCU movie has. And they involve Christine, his ex from the first movie, that a lot of people were like, she didn't get enough screen time or she wasn't used right. She is very well used in this film, and she really connects and has a very important role to play in who Doctor Strange is and how he comes to terms with who he is. And it's very powerful, like just touching, like to see Doctor Strange confront himself, like literally confronts himself in different realities, and then confronting this Christine and his love for her, despite the fact that he can't be with her, and like him coming to grips with the fact that he's not happy, despite the fact that he tries to pretend he is. There's a lot of good stuff here. It doesn't completely get resolved, but for the most part, it does. It ends in a satisfactory way. And once again, due to some of the things Doctor Strange does in this movie, which the movie makes a very good point about how Doctor Strange is one of the most dangerous people in the Marvel Universe. Whether or not he's trying to do good, he just essentially makes bad decisions or dangerous decisions. And so in the end, I think it's very fitting that he isn't 100% happy, although he does find more happiness, especially in the new character, America, who is a girl who can travel through the multiverse. That's like, she sets the entire plot in motion. Wanda is trying to get America to steal her power so she can be with her sons from another universe. Once again, it makes more sense if you watch the movie, but yeah. So Doctor Strange kind of finds a sense of happiness in befriending and being able to protect and save this girl America. And just his journey, it just is a very wholesome journey while also being very unwholesome in some ways. And so Doctor Strange, it's very fitting that he doesn't get a typical happy ending. His story is far from over, I feel, and it's confirmed that he will be in future MCU movies and projects. And spoiler alert, he might eventually just become a full-on dark wizard. I don't know. I feel like they won't do that, but then again, part of me thinks maybe he could end up being, like Wanda was, the big bad of the MCU. He could end up being that way because he makes some very questionable and morally incorrect decisions during the third act. And while it is one of those doing the wrong thing for the right reason, he does it for the sake of the multiverse. He does it to save his friend America and to save Wong and all of that. But essentially, he dabbles around in the Darkhold, the witchcraft himself, which is not good. And I don't understand how people went into this movie and were somehow shocked by the fact that there was witchcraft and sorcery in it. Like, yes, but no, because it's Doctor Strange and Wanda Maximoff, who is the Scarlet Witch. And everybody knew that going into this movie. And so when he starts using magic, and when she starts using the Darkhold, which we already knew that Wanda had possession of, it kind of shocks me that people were so shocked and surprised that there's witchcraft and stuff being fully used in this movie. And like the whole dream walking, I think it is, where you can possess the body of someone else, or of yourself in another universe, and Wanda uses that. That is like a very crucial part to the plot. Like, it wouldn't really make sense any other way. That is just for the high stakes, for the emotion, everything. That's just the way it does it. And that part, I guess, isn't that bad. Doctor Strange, in the end, there is a dead version of Doctor Strange from another universe that is on Earth. And Doctor Strange essentially is trapped in one universe, and he uses the Dark Soul, or the Darkhold, and dreamwalks into the dead corpse of himself. And to me, it's really unrealistic, and so the more unrealistic it is, the more it doesn't bother me. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is a real thing, but I don't think that dead human possession is a real thing. I just don't. And so when he does that, it's like people watch zombie movies all the time where these people are literally living dead people and they have no problem. So Doctor Strange sleepwalking or dream walking into a corpse is definitely creepy, is definitely very sorcerous, witchcraftish in terms of this universe. And yes, it kind of didn't settle quite right with me. And so that's why I'm saying if you aren't going to watch this movie or weren't thinking about it, I would say just don't bother. But once again, I just liked the way this movie turned out. I liked the journey for the most part. Him, once again, being in the corpse, it was a little strange, but it's Doctor Strange, yeah. Um, but in the end, it turns out pretty good. And once again, he does face some repercussions that is kind of teased at the end. It's not like he's going unpunished for this. His mind is definitely given over to the Darkhold, although it was destroyed. But it, like, it's something that one of the Doctor Stranges says is that it exacts a heavy toll, or like it takes a price. And yeah, Doctor Strange is probably going to have to pay for his actions, which is why, another reason why I don't feel totally bad about this film, because it portrays the witchcraft in such a negative light that I don't, it's not justifying the witchcraft. It's destroying the witchcraft. It's showing how evil the witchcraft is. And yes, it's not something that I personally would say if I made the film. It's not something I would have done. As long as they're showing it as evil, it's evil. It's the bad people. It, once again, you as a person, especially as a Christian, you have to come to terms with it yourself. I would say don't watch it if that would bother you. And there's a lot of people who it would. And it bothered me a little bit, I'm going to say. It's something that I'm definitely not going to watch a lot. It's something that I am not going to watch a lot. But in terms of this story, in terms of the franchise, I am glad that I watched this film. And there's a lot of good things that this film did for the franchise. A lot of things that it potentially did very bad. We'll see how it goes. But personally, myself, I cannot honestly say that I did not like this film. I cannot say that I thought this film was terrible and that it was just so witchcrafty that it just ruined the movie. Because for me, it wasn't. It was more than we typically see from this genre, is more than we typically see from this franchise. It's more violent, it's more scary, it's more creepy, and there's definitely a lot of sorcery and witchcraft involved in the story and the plot. And there are demons conjured in this movie that, like, there, if you saw in the trailer the big octopus thing with the one eye, that's a demon. So, but it's done in a way that's still fantasized. It's not necessarily the best fantasy, but essentially witches in fantasy, even the Chronicles of Narnia had a witch, and the witch was portrayed as evil. Now, maybe it wasn't quite, well, then again, Aslan's death, especially in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie, although it was very faithful to the book on how it was describing things, that could be seen as very demonic, but it's showing the evil in the light of evil, which is what this movie does. And it essentially, it shows us all that evil, but it also destroys it. Like I said, Wanda destroys it. And that is why I really like this movie, for the most part. I mean, I really love the movie. Essentially, it's the third act that really gets into all that really, really edgy witchcraft stuff. The most of the movie is not like that. And while it is creepier, it's not really like that. But once again, the reason why I, in the end, enjoyed this movie, although in that third act I was saying to myself, this has to end well, otherwise, this is kind of going to ruin the film for me. When Wanda gave herself up to destroy the Darkhold, when Doctor Strange kind of was confronted by Christine about him being like all the others, that he's like, they make such a big deal about the fact that he is doing something wrong. And at the end, you see very much so that it had an effect on him because he did something wrong. And as long as this movie, as long as they continue to portray evil in the light of evil, I'm okay with it. Once again, evil is not something that I would say you should watch a lot. It's not something that you should repeat over and over. It's not something that you should repeat even often. But I cannot say that it is wrong to watch this movie. I enjoyed it. Might be controversial. That is my own personal convictions and opinions. And if you want to wait till this comes out on Disney Plus or digital rental or DVD, I would suggest I might even log it into this the description of this video. I might even give you a time from where I would say this movie goes a little overboard. This movie, the overboard stuff kind of ends, and I would say you can skip this section and just watch the movie, because outside of that section, I'd say it's a very great movie. I would have no problems with it whatsoever. Then there's that section that was very shaky, but in the end, I think that it concluded in a way that made it all right. It did not conclude it did not conclude showing the evil in a positive manner. And that's why I respect this film enough. And because I thought it was a great story, I loved the characters, I have to say I give this film a positive review. I am not going to give you an overall score. I am not going to be putting this on any ranking list, any MCU ranking list that I do. I am not going to share any official scores. I'm just going to say I enjoyed this film, but I can understand why a lot of people, especially Christians, would not want to watch this film. And that is very respectable. That is very okay. I personally did not think that it was wrong to watch it, and I did enjoy it, although I can definitely see and understand why a lot of people would dislike this film, and you are absolutely valid in doing so. If you made it through the entire video, I would just like to say thank you for bearing through and watching this rant. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is becoming a massive box office sensation, and if you don't want to be a part of that, do your part to avoid this film. Do your part to boycott this film if you want. I would say if you want to boycott this film, you are 100% justified. But if you want to go to see this film, I would not say you should be condemned by anybody. I would not say that you need to be feeling guilty. But don't make watching it a habit. Go to it if you are planning on going to see it. Go see it as a chapter in the MCU story, which is a very, very well put together story, although there are chapters that I have not liked. But overall, the MCU is such a widespread franchise, and there is a lot of important story elements in this film. So I would say don't feel bad about going to see this film. But if you aren't planning on going to see it, you go ahead. And if what I said maybe changed your mind about going to see this film, I am honestly glad that I was able to forewarn you about some of the content that's going to be in this film. Also, on a last note, I would not recommend this to any kids, even if they are fans of the franchise. I would say If you're an adult, go into this film. It's your choice. Parents, please do not take your children to see this movie. It's not a movie that I think younger audiences should be exposed to. Like, once again, I would say once they're to an age where it is their choice, that's up to them. But as a parent, I think it would be wise not to let a child or even a young teenager, possibly an older teenager, depending on what you feel. It's not a great movie for minors. Once again, older teenagers, maybe talk to them about it and see how you feel. Younger teenagers, that's iffy. Children under the age of 13, would not say it would be smart to let them watch this film. But that is all of my thoughts. Thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to help you be on the lookout for more videos from Luke Film Boss. Bye.